The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So there's a lot going on this morning. I know, you know, if you watch the show, I love some Wednesday because normally we start with Ask Dr. Doreen and then we go into Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We do not have Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet this morning. But it is your lucky day because that means we're going to extend Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson is here in the studio with me. And this hour, we're going to start, this is something we've never done before. We're going to have a 1-hour chat with Vince Redmond. Now, he's a regular on Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. He is the Director of Family Services for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He is a wonderful licensed marriage and family therapist who has a background in being a behavior therapist. So he's that perfect mix that's ideal for being able to answer questions about families. So he's going to be joining us in just a minute. Nancy and I want you to know that this whole 2 hours is, we hope that we'll be interactive with you. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, feelings, questions, concerns. And there are lots of different ways that you can get in contact with us. So Traven's going to show you some of the different ways that you can communicate and connect with us. While he does that, I want to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, it's a brand new website, and it's really, I think, beautiful, although we were looking for feedback from you guys. It is meant to be able to show you whatever it is that you want to be able to see. There's many different search features. We took some of the elements that were on the old website and we made them still available. They're just in different places. So when we are live, at the top of the page, there is a red dot and it says live. And for some search engines, it automatically opens. Others, you're going to have to click the live and then it will open up onto your screen and you can decide if you want to full screen it or make it smaller. If you want to chat, and we love the chat feature on the new website, it's at the bottom of the page in the bottom right-hand corner. It says chat. And if you click on that, it opens up a window and you can type. You get more characters now than you used to on the old one. It is still free. It is still anonymous. And so we do ask that you include not your name and address. We don't need that, right? But it helps us to know what the closest major city is so that we can get an idea of what resources may be available to you in your area. So we encourage you to reach out in that way, but of course, look at all the different ways that you can get in contact with us. And I noticed that Traven even showed you, for those of you who like the old website and would rather go there, that website still exists. So whatever way you like it, we want to be able to bring it to you in that way. So we are going to take a very short break, and then we're going to be back with a special edition of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy with licensed marriage and family therapist Vince Redmond. Stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Welcome to this special edition of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Nancy Oswald-Jackson.
Thrilled to be here with you, my
Thrilled
friend.
to be here with you.
In this very special edition of we've never done this before. We've had Vince Redmond with us for short periods of time during our regular show, but we're doing an extended version of Let's Talk Autism today. Because we don't have Dr. Grant Bichet and we do have Vince Redmond. So we get to spread out a little bit. We've got Vince here. Vince, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, ladies. How are you?
Good morning. Very good.
We're thrilled to have you. Vince, for people who don't know who you are an amazing individual who's been working in the field of autism and ABA for how many years?
I've been with CARD for going on 26 years now.
Oh my gosh.
That's a long time.
That's a lifetime of
it is.
Career. And you're now the Director of Family Services, and you are a licensed marriage and family therapist, which makes you remarkable. You were remarkable before, but I think what's remarkable is that there's an opportunity for families who are doing this intensive intervention to be able to talk to somebody about family situations and the larger issues who really gets it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty, one of the beauties of Vince. So Vince, I sent you some questions that we've had piling up here from people who, that I cherry-picked questions that had specifically to do with things that an LMFT could really help with. Should we go ahead and launch in?
Sure.
Okay.
So did we want to just read the questions? Did you want to read the questions?
Yeah.
Read the questions? What do we want to do?
Well, we'll read the questions to you. I'll do the first one and Nancy will do the second one. So the question is, what advice do you have for when and how to talk to your 8-year-old about his autism diagnosis? We get this question a lot. And it isn't always about an 8-year-old. Sometimes it's about a 14-year-old, but and sometimes it's about a 3-year-old. So, but for an 8-year-old, and maybe then a broader topic about it, what do you recommend, Vince?
And again, like you said, every dynamic with the families and with their child are going to be a little bit different, right? So, obviously we want to take, specific dynamics into consideration. But generally, when you're talking with your child about their diagnosis, you're not really talking to them about their diagnosis, right? You're talking to them about their strengths, what they do well, some of the things that they might need help with, some of the things that they get supports with, what things that they do that make you laugh, what things that they do that make you smile, what things do they do that, you really want to encourage them to try hard with and to learn more. Those are the approaches you really want to take with your kids when you're trying to, teach them that they might be different than some of their friends, some of their peers in school. Maybe they don't understand why they maybe have to get pulled out from the classroom to go to speech or to go to ABA. But when we're talking with them about it, you want to make sure this isn't about a diagnosis, this isn't about a label. It's about what strengths they have, what things that they're very strong with, and what are some of the things that they need help with? What are some of the things that they need support with? And we can also talk to them about the things that we are strong with, the things that we need supports with, the things that we need help with, to really normalize that the fact that they need supports or the fact that they're getting different services than their peers is okay, that that's not anything that they should be ashamed of. That shouldn't be anything that they think that they're different or lesser than.
Okay.
And so no matter, because every circumstance, as you said, was different, Vince, but it sounds like the key is to stay positive and talk about the things that they can do and focus on that. I love that advice. Nancy, when did you tell Wyatt? When did you have the conversation with him about?
I didn't have it wasn't like a big conversation. At times things came up and I said, well, you have something called autism.
Yeah.
Which makes you think and express yourself differently.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean you're any less than.
Exactly. And for us, people ask me all the time, when did we first talk about it with Jem? And we talked about it on the day he was diagnosed when he was 2.5.
Wow.
We started using the word autism and finding ways that we could put autism always in a good light and use it as an empowering term. And one of the examples that I've used here, and we just had like the 4th anniversary of when we had James Durbin on the show. And at the time that he was diagnosed, James Durbin was on American Idol. And we would do this with lots of people, but it started with James Durbin. We would be sitting there watching American Idol. And because, by the way, we watched American Idol to teach perspective taking and facial expressions. We would turn the sound down and say, what do you think, did the judges like the way they sang based on their facial expressions? But then James Durbin would be on, and we would listen to James Durbin, and I would say to Jem, isn't he fabulous? Isn't he a wonderful singer? He's so good, and he can play the guitar, and he can play the piano, and he can write music. James Durbin is so awesome. And did you know that not only can he sing and he do it, but he has Tourette syndrome. And he also has something called autism. And guess who else has something called autism? You do. And we'd be like, isn't that awesome? And couch it that way.
Right.
So he always heard the term. It's
Yeah.
just like always been a part of his head. And but always I was adamant that nobody talk about autism as being a negative
Right.
in his presence ever.
Right.
Like that was, I'd cut you off at the knees if I heard you saying, oh, be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Stop that.
I think it's all a question of framing it, as Vince says.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and what you ladies did is you're also normalizing what autism is, right? Because kids nowadays are hearing this word more and more than they ever did before, right? And so they're going to question, what does that mean? Why are they calling me autistic? And using the same strategies that all three of us had discussed, we're just normalizing it, that it's not a bad thing. It's not taboo. It's not anything to be ashamed of. It's something to embrace, something to be that makes you unique. It's something that gives you certain, maybe abilities or strengths to be who you are. And then we're, again, talking about their strengths and weaknesses, and we go into that. It really makes us a less I can't think of a better way of saying it, but a less impactful word than if they don't know, or if we don't have those open discussions with them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, here's another question. I am no longer married to my son's father. We only talk when we have to, when it's about our son. He is 3 now and was just diagnosed as autistic. I want to do ABA, and my ex has heard bad stuff about it. How do I convince him to try it?
Conversation, right? The biggest thing is to have a somehow we want to, the professional supervisor, ABA coordinators, whomever you have, to meet with the father to answer his questions, to, minimize his concerns, to reduce any anxieties that he may have about some of the stories that he might have heard about bad ABA, right? There's bad ABA, there's bad medicine, there's bad lawyering, there's bad, teaching. I mean, there's bad everything. So those generalizations don't apply to the standards across a treatment field. And what we would want to do is meet with Dad, answer his question, really listen to his concerns, give him, a sense of hope, give him a sense that we understand where his fears are coming from, and that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that those fears are mitigated, as well as then encouraging him to understand ABA, participate in ABA, give his input to ABA, give his goals, expectations that he wants his child to meet or he wants to work on with his child. What are some of the not issues, but what are some of maybe the behavioral concerns that he has when he's with his son? Those types of things are going to have many discussions with him to really have him understand ABA, to have him really feel more comfortable with the treatment, with the science. And then having built those relationships with the supervisor is essential, because if he can trust the supervisor, trust their knowledge, trust their expertise, and trust that they want to do what's best for his child, he's going to be a lot more open to ideas and treatments, interventions, strategies, recommendations that we're going to give along the treatment plan.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Vince. You're so good.
And before I leave that question, if we're going to jump to the next one, I think it's essential also for mom and dad to understand that while they might be apart as a couple, they want to continue to parent as a family. Mm-hmm. Right? They want to both be actively participating in treatments. They want to both be participating in any parent meetings, IEPs, things of that nature, so that they're both getting the same information, they're both able to give input, and they're both able to establish working relationships within their own environments.
Yeah, and I just want to say, we've seen this in many of our friends, that one spouse, an ex or otherwise, is just not about the ABA. Right. And I think it's one of the toughest things. I think it's hard when you're a single parent in any way, shape, or form needing to deal with this. We have friends that Nancy and I share that the spouse just, is not a part of anything and walks away and says, do whatever you want to do. And that's hard. Mm-hmm. But having a spouse actively trying to prevent you from doing ABA and sometimes fighting it out in the courts, I'm just incredibly grateful that neither one of us had that circumstance. Yeah, right. Because that is a particularly hard thing. But, I think Vince gave you some great advice, and having that communication open and asking them to be open-minded enough to look at other things. I think that's an incredible thing to do. And of course, we're available to talk to, if you need somebody ever to be able to talk to your significant other and say, here's why we think you should do this. Mm-hmm. We're not only, I'm speaking for you, but I know I know you'd be good for it. We're available to talk to that person. And we also have other parents and other dads. Sometimes it takes a dad-to-dad conversation. Anyway.
Right. Like you said, we're available to help do that, right? Yeah. From a parent's perspective, with you and Nancy, and from a dad's perspective, or from a professional's perspective, and myself. We're there to help you guys as, the families, as well as all the other clinicians that are out there as well, if they have questions on how to approach this with families.
Absolutely. And I think Rodney Pete's book is a great one to give, Not My Son, because I think sometimes guys, they can relate to another guy. Yeah. And if he's a sports guy, so much.
And it's common for the denial.
Oh, so common.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. That river in Egypt, denial. Anyway, next question. I have twins. One on the spectrum, one not. My son that is not on the spectrum is now acting out. I think because he wants attention. I'm at my wit's end. They are 5, and some days I'm not sure I can do this. And we're sending this mom a hug. Because I think everybody has felt that at least on
they don't
one
think
day,
they can do it. Right.
I know I felt that way. I was like, I don't know if I'm up to this. Right. And I think that that's a normal way to feel. But Vince, talk to us about what we do with that feeling, and especially with twins and the one who isn't on the spectrum acting up.
Right. A couple things jump to my mind. The first thing is, like you said, take a deep breath and understand that again, if the function of the behavior is for attention, that's very common, and it's really, something that we can be able to work through as a team, right? We want to set up systems in the home, right? Systems for reinforcement, systems to gain attention. It be a good behavior chart. It be a following your instructions chart, your chore chart, depending on the ages of the child. I know they're 5, so there's not a lot of chores, but they're following directions, following your routines, when it's time to go to dinner, when it's time to take a bath, right? They get a lot of positive charts. Now this would be for both kids in many situations, not just one or the other. A lot of times what I see is a lot of different systems going on within homes, when really it could be collaborated into one system for both kids. But I think when we're thinking of attention-seeking behaviors, we forget that the negative attention-seeking behavior does gain a lot of attention. And so those are the times where we have to really identify which behaviors are happening. Is it screaming? Is it yelling? Is it tantruming? Is it aggression? Or is it just, just a meltdown and a cry, and then, then they kind of pick themselves back up? But those are, we want to make sure that those behaviors aren't getting a lot of attention, and the children are getting positive attention in other ways. Either it be individual, which is important, right? Making sure that each individual child is getting attention, but also as a family, that they're getting into, they're being noticed in the family. They're not just expected to do things and then we give a lot of attention for the negative behaviors. We want to make sure we're giving more positive behaviors for the following directions: being compliant, listening, doing their individual tasks, than if that was just an expectation. Those are things that we want to really point out. And then when they're tantruming or crying, we let them cry it out. We let them, have their behavior. And when they're calm, we say, okay, if you want my attention, you need to blah, 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 right? You need to go ahead and sit down for dinner, or you need to, go ahead and use nice words, or what have you, so that they realize attention is there. Mommy is there for them, but they're going to have to attain it in the right way. So there's so many different ways and different things and interventions to bring in to match your individual needs and the family's needs. But the overall umbrella on this is very common, and you have one child that's getting a lot of individualized, a lot of one-on-one attention. So we want to look at what the function of their negative attention is. How do we minimize that by using techniques like extinction, and how do we optimize a system within the home that's going to give them more positive attention? It's not just about you spending more time with them. It's the overall system that would need to be consistent.
It occurs to me as you say this, Vince, that this parent did not say whether they're already getting ABA services for the child who's not on the spectrum. But if they're not, getting ABA going with a child who's not on the spectrum is going to teach you all the things that you need to know about dealing with the attention-seeking behavior from the one who's not on the spectrum.
True.
Getting ABA for the one who's on the spectrum.
Yes, getting the ABA for the one who's on the spectrum is going to give you all the training and the tools that Vince was just talking about to be able to deal with attention. I used to teach. I was a college professor, and then after 9/11, I went into the junior high school setting and taught for a couple of years. And you want to talk about kids who are attention seeking.
Right.
It's that age range, right? And this is before Jem was born, and in the 2 years before Jem was born, and they sent me to a workshop to deal with needy kids who need attention and how to deal with attention-seeking kids. And it was ABA. I didn't know it was ABA when I went to this teacher workshop. So I just want to point out, this was not for kids on the spectrum. This was for typical preteen and teenage kids that were attention seeking, and it worked.
Right.
And served me well then when I had a child who was on the autism
Right. So
spectrum.
the same tools work for kids on the spectrum or off the spectrum. That's important.
Absolutely. And most ABA agencies are going to take a family approach anyway, right? They're going to want to, they're not going to work individually with the child not on the spectrum, but they're going to give strategies, systems, interventions that are going to help everybody.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, next question. How can I explain modesty to my 11-year-old daughter? She has high-functioning autism. She is very smart, but she has no filter. She takes her shirt off in public, lifts her skirt, puts her hands down her pants, and talks about her body to anyone who will listen.
Again, not knowing if they're in treatment or not, that would be something that could be programmatic. I mean, stuff that can be worked on to work on her theory of mind, her understanding of other people's perspectives if she does these types of behaviors. What are the social expectations, the social norms that she has to adhere to when she goes out, when she goes to her favorite restaurants or malls or stores or what have you, right? There's a lot of techniques, interventions, lessons that can help her understand what is expected of her while she's out in public. The other part of this is the behavior part of it. She's getting negative attention, I'm sure. This seems like a, partially a cognitive, issue that would need some learning and understanding, but it also seems to have a behavior component where that's being maintained because it's getting a lot of attention for it. So we would need to talk, again, as similar to the other question, find out where the reinforcers are, find out where we can give positive reinforcement, where do we give positive attention, where do we give positive regard for the child that is away from these negative behaviors. Because I'm sure when she's in public and she's doing all her things and throwing her shirt up and everyone's like, no, don't do that, don't do that. She's getting a lot of hubbub. That's all to her. That's stimulating. That's exciting. She enjoys that, even because socially she doesn't understand what she's doing is inappropriate. So this is a great example of understanding where the cognitive restructuring needs to be done and to teach, but then also behaviorally how it's being maintained. So absolutely these can be worked on, but it's going to take both behavior management as well as cognitive restructuring and cognitive learning.
And the fact that she's 11, we've talked before with you on the show, Vince, about how when we start to get into puberty years and then other issues start to come up, people react differently to our children. And it's interesting how quick people are, this behavior that might have happened when they were 5, that nobody freaked completely out. And now suddenly as the child is older, there's all this connotation about the child, and it's negative, and sexuality is put on top of it, and there are all these connotations that are put on it that really can confuse the whole issue. But my point is, it's important that this is a timely issue, because at 11, she's going to get one reaction, but when she's 14, 15, 16, and 18, it's going to get an entirely different reaction that's also not going to be what this parent is looking for. So timely to deal with these issues now, and to not get hung up in a whole bunch of feelings of how other people feel about it.
Right. And this is, like you said, this isn't a sexual thing. This isn't sexual exploitation or sexual promiscuity or what have you. She clearly just doesn't understand social norms, and she doesn't understand how to attain positive attention, and the negative attention at this point seems to be much more powerful because, again, of these social consequences that can come to it. With cognitive learning and cognitive restructuring and learning new ways to behave and to get attention and what's expected from her, her behaviors are going to go down. She's going to learn new ways to get that positive attention, and she's going to shape into the social norms that we all would expect out in the community.
Wonderful. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back to continue on with questions that you guys are sending in and have sent in already for Vince Redmond. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about an allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's
breakfast,
full of crap
cereal.
and it's hard to do. We
Yeah.
don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not
Personality, we can't do
Yeah,
anything
can't
about.
do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with, I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. When we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. But you can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to this special edition of Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy with our very special guest, Vince Redmond. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist with a more than 20-year history of experience with autism intervention, specifically ABA, as a therapist. And he is amazing. We love Vince. So Vince has been answering questions that you guys have written in. I'm going to go to one that came in on the live feature today. Hi, my son has been diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. I'm from India. Now he is 11 years old. As it is with most kids with autism, he has severe anxiety issues. One problem due to this is that he never tells me his preference. He will always tell me what he thinks I want to hear. Like recently in his school, he had a teacher who he did not like working with. It was just a feeling I had because whenever I would talk about that teacher, he wouldn't be very happy. But if I asked him if that teacher was not so nice, he would get very anxious and say, no, I like Mr. XYZ. It's the same with everything, from what he wants to eat or where he wants to go. Whenever I ask him something, I never get an answer telling me what he's thinking, only what he thinks I want to hear. How can I help him more about what he wants and reduce his anxiety? It's a very interesting issue, Vince, because there's a certain amount of perspective taking that's happening there that I kind of want to celebrate.
Right. Well, and again, you're right. I mean, he's understanding, or at least he has some understanding of what the other kids might be thinking, what they might be feeling, and so he's hesitant about saying certain behavior, or certain emotions, or the way he feels about certain things, afraid they'll get angry, upset, and what have you. So there is a good, theory of mind processing that's going on. The concern, though, is he doesn't feel that he has an open place to share his emotions, to discuss his emotions. And some of that's not just about, tell me how you feel, right? Because that's pressure. That's on the spot. That's, creates anxiety rather than actually inhibits it. So one of the things I would suggest is just starting to have conversations about emotions, how people feel different emotions, the different reasons that people feel emotions. Take the onus off of him and just talk about other kids his age and the emotions they feel and the reasons they may feel it, and really get him to feel a little bit more comfortable in that his emotions are okay, that the way he's feeling might be okay, that he might be a little anxious around his peers. That's okay. Maybe he's a little scared when the teacher raises their voice. That's okay. Maybe he's afraid that a peer's not going to like him if he says, a certain thing. That's okay. The idea is to talk about emotions in a non-threatening way, so that he feels a little bit more comfortable with it. And then over time, you'll be able to bring it in and be able to talk more specifically about what his emotions are and what his needs are. But the one thing that I would say is start a little bit more globally before we get specific.
Okay. Nancy, does Wyatt ever have a hard time answering a question about what's your favorite or which one do you prefer, or is he super...
He's pretty good about that.
See, and that's never been Jem's favorite thing. And now that he's at a point where I can talk to him about things and say, why is that? And he says, well, when you ask me which one is my favorite, it feels very permanent. That if he has to say, I like blue better than red, then it's like red can never be a thing anymore. And he says, and there's so many things to weigh that it, like, his brain just sort of shorts out and it makes him uncomfortable. And I've noticed that with other kids too, Vince, that are on the spectrum, that it's, and I still do it. When I'm interviewing kids, I'll go, so what's your favorite, whatever. And then I think, like, that's not necessarily the best question for an interviewer to ask a kid on the spectrum. But I love, Vince, what you talked about, being able to help them to be able to figure it out. I'll be honest with Jem, I just told him that, like, it's an acting job. That just, like, say something as quickly as possible and know that you're not going to be tied to it.
Right.
Like, it's not the end of the world, and just pick one of them and go, that's my favorite. That's not necessarily the best advice, and it's gotten him into some sticky wickets. Not horrible things, but where somebody's fed him something that he didn't particularly love because he didn't want to choose. Anyway, so imperfect advice.
Those are strategies.
Yeah.
Those are strategies. And we have to teach our kids sometimes strategies because they're rule followers, and they will follow different types of strategies on how to deal in different social situations. Right? And if we can give them a strategy, let's say it's just about one specific situation, when kids come up and say, how are you? Or what's your favorite? And that's okay. Have an answer and stick to that answer. That's totally fine. But again, it builds his confidence knowing I have an answer.
Yeah. Especially people ask him all the time, what's your favorite subject at school? And he's like, oh, if I say English, then my chemistry teacher's going to be upset. And I'm like, they're not here. They're not going to know.
Right.
Like, let it go. But that's not how and it does raise anxiety in any case.
Okay, here's a question. Our family does not believe our son has autism. Both my parents and my husband's parents have told us they think it is our parenting. Our son is 4, nonverbal, and getting intensive ABA. We have basically stopped seeing our family. It's really hard. I can't help but think how much easier our lives would be if we had their support. I hate that they don't really know our child and aren't aware of how hard he is working to be in their world. Is there any advice you can give me to either get them to wake up or to stop mourning the loss of our extended family?
And the sad part about it is this happens, I think, a little bit more often than we want it, want to admit to. There's a lot of uneducated family members that don't understand autism. They don't understand developmental disabilities. They really don't understand the needs of the kids. And a lot of times, old school, that was just your parenting, you just whipped them into shape. And unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. So it is a very delicate situation. My direct, what really stood out to me in this question was, I can't help but think how much easier it would be if we had their support. That is what they need to know. So we have to have an adult conversation with our adult parents. We need to be able to sit down with them as parents and say, thank you for your input. Thank you for the way you view things. However, this is what he's been diagnosed with. These are what the professionals and we believe in. And our lives and your lives would be so much greater and so much better and with your support. We are asking for your support. We are asking for your help. We are asking for you to be a part of the family. It tears us apart when we're not supporting one another. We have to have that emotional conversation so that choices could be made. Grandmas and grandpas have to make that choice. They either dig their feet, or their heels in the sand and lose their family, or they say, well, I don't believe it, but I will do whatever it takes to help you. That's okay. They will learn over time. They will see the child progress. They will see how they gain through treatments. The child will start doing things that they've never done before because of treatments. That buy-in will come. But the initial thing is we have to have a very uncomfortable, conversation with our parents. And that's depends on cultural norms, depends on age. Sometimes that can be extremely difficult. However, we have to have that conversation with them to let them know they are very important. They are a very important part of the family structure, a very important part of the support structure. And everybody's lives would be easier, more fulfilled, more collaborative if they were supporting the treatments that the children are receiving.
Yeah. Nancy, were your parents, I know that you lost your parents while Wyatt was in intervention.
Right.
I lost my mom while Jem was in intervention. Were your parents supportive, though?
Well, they knew that he was getting intensive therapy. I don't know that they knew quite how to help with it. They lived on the East Coast, and I tried as much as possible to teach them what the basics were, but they weren't that involved in his daily life. So, but they were supportive of him getting therapy.
And they weren't telling you that he didn't have autism?
No.
And see, my mom in the beginning, before we had him diagnosed, said to me, you and your husband are terrible parents. You've ruined this child. What have you done? He's terrible. He's like a wild animal. And it was part of what spurred us on to go and get a diagnosis because of the horrible things that she said.
My mother actually thought there was something amiss long before I did.
Yeah.
She kept saying there's something wrong here. You need to go figure this out.
But at least she was, my mother just flat out said to me, you and your husband are terrible parents and you've ruined this child. And I laugh about it now, sobbed about it, for a really long time.
Right.
But, then when he was diagnosed, I was very close with my mother and loved my mother, but my mother was a strong personality. I know, how could that be, right? And was very vocal. I know, it's shocking to you, and had an opinion on everything. I take after her, not at all, right? Wink, wink. Right, not at all. But, I initially, when he was diagnosed, because my mother wasn't living near us, and I said to my mom, you can't come right now, because I need to get things in order, and I'll tell you when you can come. And then about 6 months into therapy, I said to her, you can come now with the understanding that I only have room for one of two things, support or silence. But I don't want you to stay away from him. He needs a family, he needs a grandma, but this is what I have bandwidth for, support or silence. And of course my mother said, well, I guess I'll have to be silent then because I can't be supportive. And I was like, great. End of discussion. That works for me, Mom. That takes care of it. But she very quickly came and saw the ABA, and in the beginning was, this is terrible. What have you signed up for? This is the most ridiculous thing, which, come on, when we all saw ABA for the first time, did we not all have that reaction?
Yeah,
I was like, touch car?
Right.
What? This makes no
40
sense.
hours, 30 hours?
We're at
What?
40 hours. This is craziness, right? That was my mother's reaction. But at the end of a week of watching it on a baby monitor, when she saw him have a breakthrough, my mother stood up, like spilled coffee, and said, "This is the most incredible. Why isn't this on 60 Minutes? Why isn't this on every news show? Oh my gosh." And then went around to all of her friends and said, "Oh, my amazing daughter is doing this amazing intervention with her amazing kid," and was supportive. But it took, if I hadn't said support or silence, my mother and I wouldn't have spoke probably ever again.
Right.
So I love your advice, Vince, to have the grown-up conversation. And don't kid yourself, I was terrified when I said that to my mom. And I said it on the phone before she got on a plane. And I said, here's the deal. And I was shaking because it's my mom, who I want to have a
In your life,
relationship
of course.
with in my life and in my child's life. But it was true. I didn't have the bandwidth to listen to my mother telling me, that I'd messed this up.
Right.
And to do what we needed to do.
Right.
Had to choose. And then I gave her the choice. And she was not going to be the person to say, I'm choosing not to be in my child and my grandchild's life.
Right.
Oh, that would have looked bad on her resume.
Yeah.
That was not going to happen. Anyway.
But you make a great point, Shannon, about we have to be honest with what we need, right? And what is going to make, what is going to make the whole family, better. And that difficult conversation leads to things like you said. I have bandwidth for one of two things, and the choice is yours, right? We're putting the choice back into them, but we're leaving no ace in the hole. Everything's out there. This is what we want. Take it, right? And then it's really up to our family members on how they want to participate with the family. And that's information we can use moving forward.
Yeah, but there are some people who just aren't equipped to deal with this.
Right.
I have come to this realization, and there was one friend that I have that still says that they think that my child never had autism. That that was just a mistake, and saw us go through 40 hours of therapy and years of whatever, but still says, look at him now. Nah, he never had it. And I have come to realize that that's because he didn't want that for me. His brain was like, well, I don't want that for Shannon. I care about Shannon, so I'm just going to say it doesn't exist. And he can't get past that. And I just had to write that off and go, that is not a part of my story. I'm not listening to you when you say that. That doesn't rewrite what we went through. It's not the truth. Think whatever you want to think.
Right.
And let it go.
Yeah, just detach from it and let him have his feelings.
But he's not the person I go to when I'm having a tough day either. Our friendship suffers because, I'm not going to bring things up to him because the reality police don't live in his head.
Right.
In any case. But don't you agree, Vince, that there are just some people who aren't capable of supporting us?
Yeah, I would say they support you in a different way, like you were saying, right? They support you, but they think that they're supporting you in a way that makes them feel supportive. But yet for you, who's the recipient, you don't feel, you're really not receiving the support that, that they think they're giving you. So the idea is you classify them, so to speak, right? This is a friend who's a good friend that I can go to for adult conversations or maybe adult supportive decisions that might be made. Should I buy this new house? Should I get this new car? What should I do with my retirement fund? Those types of things. But when it comes to talking about family, talking about your child, talking about, treatments, that's a conversation that you keep away from that person because that's not, that's not where they're supported for you.
Absolutely. I meant to say hi to Chris, Paula, Michelle, and now Faith, who have written in on Facebook and said hello. We're glad that you're here with us. So we've got another question, and this one, it's a heartbreaker for me. I have 4 kids. 3 are on the spectrum. Our days are filled with ABA therapy, speech, OT, and ballet for our daughter who is not on the spectrum. We prioritize making her life as normal as possible. Unfortunately, that leaves us no time to be a couple. My husband and I are roommates taking care of our kids. Of all the things I have lost to autism, this makes me the saddest. What can we do to reinvent our marriage that doesn't take away from our kids? Well, Vince, licensed marriage and family therapist, bring it.
Right? The first thing is this, you guys have strength and unity. Look what you've done for your family. This is awesome. You guys have been able to be fantastic parents. You're doing what you can for your family, and you guys are still doing things together for the family. That's fantastic. That's a strength. Don't ever overlook that. That is absolutely phenomenal and great. A lot of families can't do that. They break up because they can't help their families the same ways. You guys are doing it as a team. That's phenomenal. That's absolutely great. However, one of the things that I always like to think about is I think of your life in think of three different plants, right? Or three different pots. You have individual pot, which is just you and your needs. You have the family pot, which is the family's needs. And then you have the couples pot, which is you and your husband's needs. All three of these plants need water. We can't give all the water to the family plant because that plant will actually die because it'll get too much water, and the other two pots won't have enough water, right? Well, we can't just give two water. The other one, the last one, will then die because it's not getting enough water. And that's what we're seeing here. The family pot and the individual pot seem to be getting water, attention, things that we're doing, but the couples one is not. So what do we do? How do we give that pot some water? The one thing about having 3 autistic kids, you guys are scheduled. You have schedules and you have scheduled lives. You're following your treatments, you're following your appointments, you're following your days and sessions, right? You need to add in 1 day a month, couples. That's your date night. It could be during therapy. It could be during a CBS event where your kids are at the centers. It could be where grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, somebody, or even hiring a behavioral babysitting agency comes in so you and your husband can go out for 2 hours, 3 hours, just to be together. Again, you might talk about the kids the whole time, but you guys are out together. You're seeing a movie, you're having dinner, you're just having time for each other, right? That's the number one thing I would say. Because of your schedules, schedule that in. I know people say this, the main deterrent for this not happening is we don't schedule it in. We just say we'll do it when we have free time. As you've pointed out, there is no free time. That time will always be filled with something. So make it happen. Schedule it in. The last Friday of the month, the first Friday of the month, the second Wednesday of the month. Doesn't matter. You fit it in where it's going to best fit your families and your supportive network's needs. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is every night I would prescribe for you guys, you need to have 30 minutes when the kids go down where it's just you guys talking. Typically when the kids go down, we go down. It's out, right? Lights out, everyone's tired from the day. Force yourselves to have 30 minutes to talk. It doesn't matter the topic. The thing is if you build it into your schedule, you start to look forward to that time. You start to look forward to the time where you guys are talking with one another. You start looking forward to the time where you can just be alone and tell that funny joke, tell that little story, tell that, the problem that might be coming up. Those times, again, are essential to your guys' communication, right? You want to spend that time on a day-to-day basis. I would say no less than a half an hour every day at the end of the day where you guys communicate, touch base, actually connect with one another again, right? Again, topics will vary, but you spend that time together, I guarantee things will start feeling a little bit more connected to one another. But again, all of that you would need to put it into your schedule so that you follow through with it. make sure that it happens. Make sure that you are aware of it. Make sure that it's in your forethought, right? It's not just something that I'll do tomorrow. It's every day, 30 minutes a day when the kids go down, and one time a month, have a date night. I think those are the first things that I would say to reunify, to reinvent, to re-spark your guys' marriage.
Okay.
It's great advice, Vince. I remember the first time I met Temple Grandin, and one of the first questions she asked me was I still married to my husband of the child that I was talking with her about? And I said, yeah. Yeah, still
Kinda, right?
Well, I was like, yeah, we have this joke that somebody's going to bring a divorce decree and put it on our door and notify us that we've been divorced, because you would hear sometimes of the prevalence of it. That was before the study came out that said that
That's
people who
not
stay
true.
married
Right.
are actually stronger for it. But she would say, do you ever take time as couples? And I laughed in her face. I was like, like, how would you do that? Because I think it's not just the scheduling, Vince. I think it's, where are the kids when you are on the date?
Right.
It's a lot better than it used to be, because as you mentioned, there are au pair services that can send babysitters that are trained in things now. That can be expensive, but we've seen families over the years resolve this in lots of different ways, that they apply for and get respite and train the people themselves, or have their ABA provider train the respite workers. We've seen that IBT has put out a video for babysitters to train them for how to work with kids on the spectrum, so that's really helpful. But one of the most inventive things I've seen is that parents get together, moms get together and trade. So I will watch your kids on this night while
Right.
you go on a date with your husband, and then you watch mine. It's harder when you have three. But here's the thing that Temple Grandin said to me that sort of kicked my butt about this. She said, oh, you have to do this because you have to model this behavior for your child.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? And that's because we won't do something for ourselves, but
Right.
we'll do it for our kids.
Right.
And you talk in this mom, about how you prioritize keeping your daughter who's not on the spectrum, keeping her in ballet and having her life. But all four of your kids need to see what a loving relationship looks like, and what it's like to prioritize your coupledom.
Yes.
So do what Vince says, because you're setting a good example.
Absolutely.
Well, Vince, we're like out of the time for the hour, and this has been so luscious to have you for a full hour. We really appreciate you being here. If people are card clients and they want to reach out to the Family Services Department, how can they get a hold of the department or you?
They can email me at v.redmond, REDMOND, at centerforautism.com.
There we go. Thank you so much
Thank
for being
you,
with us,
Vince.
Vince. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, ladies. Have a great rest of your week.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
too.
All right, so we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back for
Let's Talk Autism.
more Let's Talk Autism with
More of
Shannon and
it.
Nancy. We've got a bunch of guests in this next hour, plus some news. We're going to be starting out with Gretta Berghammer and Tyann. And I don't have Tyann's last name here, and that might be because we're not sharing it. But we're going to be talking about theater and what that can do for individuals on the autism spectrum. This makes me happy, because that's what my master's degree is in theater. And then in the second half of the hour, we are going to be talking about the amazing Fullerton Cares yearly event that makes me so happy, the Mardi Gras for Autism. And we're having some VIPs in the house, because Larry Hauser's going to be here. He's the one who started Fullerton Cares. And this Mardi Gras for Autism is really his brainchild. And for the first time, his son Boyd is going to be here. And his daughter, Maddie, his stepdaughter, Maddie, is going to be here as well. Because we're going to hear what it's like for the volunteers, but also for a sibling. Maddie's been doing some really incredible things. So that's going to be happening after this break. So stick with us.
Hard times lead to good choices. Many times you're going to find out that change is coming and it's not something that you like to see. Things sometimes just don't work. Sometimes you have to put your child in a new school. Sometimes you have to put them in a different classroom. Often you'll see this with perhaps special education versus regular education, or everyone's favorite, puberty. All bets are off then. However, these things happen when they need to happen. So making that hard choice is super, super scary. But when you open those doors to look at things that maybe you've never dreamed you would have to look at, you're going to find help that you never expected. There are a lot of people out there dealing with the same things that you are dealing with, and there is a level of help that you never even knew existed. So don't be afraid when it's time to look at the scary problems that you're having. When those things come up, when the aggression increases, when things are falling apart at home, when you're getting the calls from the schools, don't be afraid. Reach out, find out what you need to do. You might need to look at new schools, new housing, you might need to access new levels of service, but I am telling you, you're going to see amazing things. There are children that as they grow do things with the help of others, very specialized support, that you never thought they could do. So once you do that and you meet the child where he or she is and you give them what they need, everybody can do better and you're going to see amazing progress.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And, yeah, that was a great hour with Vince. So,
yes.
And now we have more special guests joining us in just a minute, but first we're going to cover a few in the news stories. In Psychology Today, there was a quite intensive article about sort of the history of autism and the battle to define autism.
Yeah, I mean, words matter, right? I think we can all say that. And the words that have surrounded autism, there continues to be an endless battle. I mean, even that we have people in our community who feel very strongly that they would like to be referred to as being autistic,
right,
or an autistic.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have people in the community who are like, I am not autistic, I'm a person who has an autism spectrum disorder,
right,
or a diagnosis. And even the word disorder, we get, people are like, why does, is it always a disorder?
Mm-hmm.
And why do we have to define it that way? And then you'll see people who are not as well versed in the topic and they'll
Mm-hmm.
call it a disease.
Yes.
And then everybody gets mad. And so I do think that words matter, and trends around words matter because it amounts to funding for things and public perception
Mm-hmm.
and those kinds of things. I don't know that there's an answer to it. And of
Right.
course, we have this whole controversy that swirls around our words too. That, there's the whole campaign to end the use of the R word that is, I'm going to say it on the show, but people do not. I have a reaction, don't you, when you hear the word retarded?
Yes, definitely.
Like we all have this emotional reaction and go, let's not be using that
Right,
word
right.
in conjunction with people. It's not user friendly anymore because of all the connotations. That word it has other meanings, and yet we want to wipe it from the language because it's so volatile. So, but now, if you say recovery with
Mm-hmm.
autism, used to be if you said cure, people would pull out the pitchforks. But
Right,
now if you
jump
say
on you.
recovery,
Right.
and people are like, that's not appropriate. That's
Mm-hmm.
not an appropriate. And it's worse even than just the R word recovery.
Mm-hmm.
The concept of it, people are like, don't talk about that. That is impossible.
Right.
Nobody ever gets to the point where they don't have the disorder. And I'm like, well, we can talk about a lot of things, but that happens. People
Mm-hmm.
get to the point where they have the disorder and then they gain skills, and some people get to the point where they no longer have
Test.
a disorder. That
As
doesn't mean
having
that
the disorder,
that
right.
they don't have autism anymore, but it's not disabling.
Yes.
That happens.
Yes, it does.
And I want to talk about that to let people know that it happens, but I don't know what word to use without offending people.
Right.
But anyway, so this is in Psychology Today.
Interesting article. It kind of goes through the history of defining it and redefining it.
And how, there are all these, the word epidemic
Yeah.
That's another one that sets people off
Because that refers to as a disease.
Exactly, because the definition of epidemic says disease. So, but other people are like, well, then what is the word to describe the increase? And then we have people who fight and say it's not increasing, that these people,
Are just being better diagnosed.
Right, by the thousands.
Right.
When they were crossing the Delaware, that apparently Washington had about, 2% of the people in his boat were apparently on the spectrum, but we didn't have a word for it then. I don't know. But anyway, what interests me is that we have already been able to phenotype at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. They haven't published yet, but they've already been able to phenotype, I believe it's 7 now, distinct types of autism that are clusters that have the same, this, when you're out someplace and you meet somebody, I'll meet somebody and I'll go, oh my gosh, this young man is just like Wyatt. Or I meet somebody else and I go, oh, this is somebody who's like Jem. Or, oh, this is like somebody, a friend of ours' child. And you see that there are similarities of their types of autism. So I'm looking forward to the day when we put the word autism aside and that we come up with new names and redefine the whole thing and it's phenotyped. That's what I'm looking forward to. And I want to be a part of the naming because I want to name it all positive stuff.
Okay, that sounds good.
I keep saying, let's name it Red 42. I currently participate in the Red 42 group. Anyway.
Another story about Amazon removing books promoting autism cures and vaccine information.
Yeah.
And Facebook has also announced it's cracking down on the spread of vaccine misinformation.
Yeah. And at the... I don't know whether it's at the request or at the suggestion, but it's somehow related back to the CDC. So I don't know whether the CDC has said, hey, why are you putting this out there because it's misinformation? And I don't think either one of us would presume to say that there isn't misinformation out there, right? But I'm just wondering, are they doing this with all kinds of books? Like if somebody writes a book about, sewing, are they going to make them prove that it actually the sewing technique works, or they're going to pull that from Amazon too? Or is this just targeted towards this particular subject?
It seems like it's just targeted to this particular subject. And it'll be interesting to see what books they pick as being...
Well, they've already removed books. It's just a very interesting time that we live in, and I believe that knowledge is power. And the internet is a very interesting place where people apparently take information. This is what we're told, is that people take information and they consume it and they're not smart enough to look and see if it's true. Who are those people? Because I don't know those people. Do you ever just read one thing and make up your mind, Nancy?
No, I don't.
And how many people do you know that do that?
Very few.
Yeah, I'm always worried about the dumbing down of all groups. But in particular, it's always very frustrating to me when I see people post things and say, well, those lemmings that just, listen to Wakefield. And I'm like, who are they talking about? Or lemmings that listen to Jenny McCarthy. Or like, who is that exactly that they're referring to? It kind of scares me a little bit. Because I didn't crawl out from underneath a rock. I read, and it feels like censorship to me. Like if you can't get a book on a certain topic, why?
Yeah, especially if it's a book that mentions that a certain subset of children might be affected by vaccines. Does that mean that book's going to be taken off Amazon?
And even if you can prove that it's false. What if I want to read that because I'm writing a paper about that, right? Like, but I'm not allowed to get it. And I guess, Amazon is saying, well, find it other places. It just feels weird to me.
It does feel weird. I agree.
It feels very, very weird. Feels very, what are we going to do next? Burn these books? That's what it feels like to me. Makes my butt cheeks a little tight. That's what I'm saying. That's all. Okay, but here's an interesting article. about pesticides, because you know how I feel about pesticides.
Yes.
I'm not about the pesticide thing. There's a new study that's out that shows early pesticide exposure has at least a correlation with an increased risk of autism.
Before birth and during the first year of life has been linked to, it's the largest epidemiological study to date on the connection. I think there have been others. We've heard this before.
Yes. Starting in 2011, which was the year that we started this show, the first study came out that showed that at least there was a correlation between the amount of pesticides in a child's urine and their perceived lack of attention, lack of ability to pay attention to something, ADH symptoms. And that the more pesticides in a child's urine, it was directly related to how high their behaviors were that were about lack of attention and focus. And the recommendation then was, let's look into this further.
Right.
And people have. But this is a very big study. So listen to this. What they did was they took a highly sprayed agricultural area in California, and they saw that children were 10 to 16% more likely to develop autism and 30% more likely to develop severe autism that impacted their intellectual ability because they lived within a certain area. It goes on in this study, which you Google exposure and to pesticides and autism today, and you'll find it because it just came out. And you will see that it's before birth and in that first year that they were looking at, and the rates are crazy higher. I think that I don't know whether I highlighted it here. There's one that I think it's like 30% more likely. Yeah, 30% more likely to develop severe autism.
Yeah.
That was what I just said. So what does this tell us? That there's something going on there, and that we need to limit exposure in the time that a mother, before she gets pregnant, while she's pregnant, and we need to limit the exposure to small children. They were just looking at the year before birth and the first year after birth. But I mean, if it has this big of an impact, what's it doing to a 2-year-old?
I know, right.
And you got to look at all exposure to pesticides because it's everywhere. It's in mattresses. It's in sheets.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on a tear lately, only buying organic sheets, organic cotton, and yes, I know before everybody writes in that
It's expensive.
Well, actually, it's not. If you go to the right places and find the right sheets, it's not that wildly expensive, but you have to look around. But a lot of those places, like the discount places like TJ Maxx and Home Goods and places like that, you have to hunt, but you can find them, and they're not that expensive. And they're softer, I have to say. I know people will say, well, what's the guarantee? How organic are they? Well, the one thing we know is that it's, very likely significantly better than what you would have gotten if they weren't organic. I'm not saying that they have no pesticide on them, but every bit that you can move the dial, do the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen, don't do those. And if you live in a place that is highly agricultural, it may be time to look at not being there for a certain period of time. Look at the studies and look at this study. We took this from EcoWatch, but it's...
It was reported in BMJ.
Yeah.
Is that the British Medical Journal?
Yes, and Health Day reported it. There was another study that looked at exposure of 11 pesticides specifically that have been linked to intellectual impairment in animals and smaller human populations. And they looked at very specific pesticides. I know I've given my talk here before about, for me in 2011 when that first study came out, before that I was like, organic, schmorganic, whatever.
Right.
And then I looked at that study and I was like, I don't get it, because if this were true, they would tell us, right?
Right.
But then I looked at what the pesticide does and got a better understanding of it, and I went, okay,
exactly.
Everything changes here. And we went largely organic. We do the Clean 15 and we don't do the Dirty Dozen.
Okay. Where can you find a list of the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen?
So EW.org, that's Environmental Working Group. I think it's EW, it might be EWG. Environmentalworkinggroup.org. They always, but if you just Google Dirty Dozen Clean 15, a lot of websites pick it up, and it changes every year. And you need to look at the list every year because they actually test a wide sample of those fruits and vegetables to see. A good rule of thumb is if it's something that has a thin skin, then you want to get it organic.
Okay.
If it's something that has a peel, a lot of times it's okay, although there are exceptions to that rule. There was one year when you absolutely were advised not to do grapefruit other than organic because there'd been some blight and they had dumped a bunch of pesticides on all the grapefruit, especially red grapefruit. I don't think that's true now. But check out what the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 and then adhere to it because it really does make a difference. And more restaurants are going organic, which is a lovely thing.
Yes.
All right, we've got big guests. We're going to start with Gretta Berghammer and Tyann. And I don't have Tyann's last name, but Tyann is a parent whose children are involved, with the Sturgis Youth Theater. So we're going to be talking about theater and why it's particularly good for autism, and this makes me all feel warm and fuzzy.
Right.
So.
And later we'll have Autism Fullerton Cares.
Yes.
Here, so
fabulous Larry Hauser and his 2 fabulous kids. Really excited about that.
Okay.
So stick with
stay with us.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does my child have meltdowns? Well, the difference between tantrums and meltdowns, they're a part of typical development, but meltdowns are when things get a little bit more out of control, when even the child isn't sure what's entirely wrong. Generally with a meltdown, there's an environmental component. There's something else going on outside the child that's making the tantrum worse. It's really important that we start to be detectives and take notes and look around at the environment and start to figure out what are the things that happen every time your child has a meltdown. And lastly, it's important to get help. You really can't face these kinds of things effectively completely on your own. Tantrums, they're a part of typical development, but don't accept meltdowns as something that just happens. Make sure you get help and support. You might be asking yourself if your child has autism.
Hi, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome back to Talk of Facts. We hear questions all the time, and we want to give you the answers that help make your journey in autism easier and more navigatable. Less than a year ago, we interviewed the top 100 doctors in the United States working with children on the spectrum, and we asked them a question in the cloak of secrecy. What are the top 3 mistakes parents living with autism do? Number 1, and the one that makes me laugh the most, is when they use their physician as a marriage and family therapist. 1, the doctors told me it made them uncomfortable, and 2, they were highly unqualified to provide that type of advice. So the night before your physician appointment with your MAPS doctor, get together with your spouse, significant other, and write out the list of the targets in the agenda that you want to cover at the physician's appointment. Get in sync. Then you'll be definitely spending less time and not making that doctor so uncomfortable. Second thing that was the most common mistakes parents living with autism make is they want to go too fast. And really, you want to pace yourself in the autism journey. We all know that we want to get our kid to be the best they can be and hopefully recover from autism. And what a lot of the doctors have told me is that you want to really pace yourself. 1, to let the labs be your guide. And 2, work with your physician on the prioritization and the delivery of the different medical interventions. The 3rd most common mistake they felt families made was giving up too soon. And what you need to know is they're invested. They're looking at wanting to get the best from your child. But I tell you that when I got that and consolidated the 100 interviews with these physicians, most of the doctors who brought that up had tears in their eyes. They want you to know that they're in the fight with you, and they want you to know that hope is really real. It may take hard work and it may take time, but to not give up and to stay in the game. So let Taka help you. We'll have some more Taka facts for you in the future, real questions and real answers for the autism journey.
Welcome back, everyone. We've been having a wonderful, quick confab with our next two guests. We're going to try not to slaughter their names, but we've got Gretta Berghammer and Tyann Rouw. Did I get even close?
Yes, perfect.
Welcome to the show, ladies. And Gretta, tell us what type of theater we're talking about and the benefits for youth with autism with theater. Tell us what type of theater you are.
I would love to talk about autism and theater.
Okay, great.
What I think caught your eye is a new piece that I'm working on, which is a type of theater called immersion theater. And what immersion theater does is it creates a very specific environment and then gives the audience the opportunity to interact not only with the environment, but with the actors as well. So the audience does not assume the traditional role of sitting and watching. You know, in this case, it's they come in, they're offered a costume piece, and then they're given an opportunity to actually participate in the production itself. And the one I'm working on right now is in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing.
Oh, wow.
So the young people who come to the theater will be traveling to the moon with the 15 actors that I've been working with.
I want to go to the moon with you guys.
I'd love for you to go to the moon with us. We really would. You know, theater is, in my opinion, evolving, is becoming, I think, a really beautiful, supportive way of including young people on the autism spectrum in social settings with others. Yes, they get this fabulous artistic and theatrical opportunity, but for me, it's being in an environment that requires humans to interact with each other in some capacity, and that can be verbal or that can be nonverbal. And because theater relies on modeling, because it is so highly visual, because it has such potential for being interactive and engaging, because this immersive theater does not require that you stay contained in restrictive setting, I think it really supports the gifts and skills and talents and behaviors of youth with autism.
Well, amen to that. You're preaching to the choir here. And I will say that we had Dr. Kerry Magro on the show a week ago today. He's a young gentleman diagnosed at the age of, I think, 4, who just got his PhD. And when we asked him, you know, what do you think the secret sauce for your success is, Dr. Magro? And one of the first things that popped out of his mouth was,
theater. My
mother took me and made me participate in theater, and it helped me immensely. So there you go.
Now, we've also got with us Tyann Rouw. And Tyann, you have 3 teenage sons, and you're a full-time mom and a part-time writer. And your twins, Isaac and Noah, were diagnosed with autism before their 2nd birthdays. And tell us about their involvement in theater.
Well, I have 3 boys, and 2 of them have been involved in theater quite a bit with Gretta. And we first met Gretta through a project that she did called the Spectrum Theater. And after they went to a couple of those sessions, Gretta said, you know what, I think they are ready to get involved in something a little bit more complicated. And so they were involved in what's called Sturgis Youth Theater, which is a 1-month-long summer production. And my kids were not really interested in doing it at all. And Gretta said, okay, here is a ticket to see Jack and the Beanstalk, which is what they performed that summer. My kids went, I went, we watched it. They loved the show. But when I said, hey, is this something that you want to do? They said, no, absolutely not. We don't want to do it. And Gretta said, don't worry, I've got a plan. And Gretta's kind of sneaky. So long story is that she recruited my boys to kind of help
do some research for an upcoming summer production. She listened to their opinions. She had them check out books from the library. She took them to the coffee shop and had discussions with other peers. And she really listened to their opinions. And they became really invested in kind of the show and in the relationship with Gretta and other peers. And finally she said, okay, can I count on you to be in the next show, which at the time was Cinderella? And they said, yes, we'd love to. So they kind of were manipulated in a way to get to be there. But they have never looked back.
Well, good teaching always is manipulation, right? So that's okay when it's all for the good. But we should talk about the fact that you, in addition to being a writer, you have a podcast. Tell us about your podcast, Tyann.
The podcast is actually something that my husband and one of my sons does, and it's called Autism in the Wild. And Gretta's actually been on the podcast twice, but it was kind of a brainchild of my husband and my son Noah, and they've been having a lot of fun with it.
Well, and so where can people go to listen to Autism in the Wild?
You can go to iTunes and check it out there, or really any other place where podcasts are available.
And you've got a blog. I was thinking that the blog and the podcast went together, but you've got a blog. What's your blog?
I do. It's called Turn Up the V.
And
as
what
in volume?
What is the V?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually stands for volume, but
Okay.
it also stands for Valium.
Oh, okay, great.
Wonderful.
We can relate to that.
So, with this new production that you're doing, what's the title of the show, Gretta?
The name of the show is called To Touch the Moon.
Ooh,
And the
I
young
like it.
people who are coming to see it, just 15 at a time, will come 3 different times to participate in 3 different episodes.
Wow.
In episode 1, they get a chance to practice what it's like to be an explorer in a new environment. In episode 2, we turn the clock back to 1969, and they're going to pretend to be astronauts in training. And they go through a series of experiences at Building 9 on the NASA campus. And then they come back a 3rd day and for episode 3, which is actually on the surface of the moon. And each episode lasts about 45 or 50 minutes.
And so how can people find out? This is happening in Iowa, in Cedar Falls, Iowa?
It is. It's happening in Cedar Falls, Iowa, on the campus at the University of Northern Iowa. If anyone listening or watching this is interested, they should reach out to me, as seating is very, very limited. Like I said, just 15 young people and then 15 adults who come with them to watch what's happening in each of these episodes. And I can be reached through email, which is Gretta, Gretta, and there's a dot, and then my long last name, Berghammer, Berghammer @uni.edu. They can also just do a Google search for the Sturgis Youth Theater, and they would be able to find me as well.
And then you're going to do a summer program again this year, too?
I am doing a summer program again. That will involve about 50 young people. As is true of all of my work, it's completely inclusive. Of the 50 young people who will participate this summer, approximately 25% will be identified to me as individuals on the autism spectrum. And so all 50 of these young people will come together and help me do a production of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs.
Oh, great.
And is that like a month-long thing, or how long?
Yeah, it's a 4-week. Yeah, it's a 4-week camp, and young people are with me anywhere from 3 to 5 hours, 5 days a week. And it's a great experience for, like I said, a group of young people to come together and work across age and grade levels, because it's open to anyone who is ages 9 and up.
That's amazing. It makes my pulse race. I'm sure that there are other parents too that hear this and go, oh, I'd love to have my child involved.
Yeah, Tyann, what advice would you give to a parent who might be hesitant about having their child involved with theater?
Well, I would tell the parent, I was a little bit hesitant too, but your kids will really surprise you with what they can do in theater. And Gretta in particular has really no expectations about what the kids cannot do. She just assumes everyone is competent and can do anything. I would say, you know, give it a try. Theater is inclusive, it's welcoming, and also, you know, discuss any needs or support that you feel that your student might need, and figure out a plan to make those kinds of things happen, and just go for it.
It's a really wonderful program. And Gretta, you've been doing this for how long?
9 years now.
And you've got to have a wealth of knowledge. What would you say, you know, very concisely, and as short as amount of time as you can, what have you learned in 9 years that we should all know?
I've learned 3 things. I've learned, number one, that parents are the best expert for their young person, and that it is critical that I listen to what they tell me about their young person and make as many offers as possible that I can think of to help support their young person. If I can't think of it, then it's my job to invent it. It's me doing what I can to support them. The second thing is that, and I know I may anger some people when I say this, but I truly believe it from the bottom of my heart. Best practices for working with young people on the autism spectrum is just good practice. I don't know a single young person who doesn't benefit from visual prompts, who doesn't benefit from peer mentoring, who doesn't benefit from something being modeled or explained in ways that include language or non-language. And the third one is that, you know, theater helps all young people, but especially those on the spectrum, begin to trust their imagination and the beauty of playing pretend. And, you know, once you can get comfortable with that, so many other ways of thinking just begin to open up to you, just from the way that you visualize reading a book to the way that you begin to think about solving problems.
Well, we love what you're doing.
Love it.
And is there a website that people can go to if they want to know more?
Yes, they can go to the Sturgis Youth Theater website. They can also find myself, Tyann, and the Sturgis Youth Theater on Facebook as well.
Okay, great.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, ladies. This is incredible. If I get to Iowa, I'm going to be looking you up because this makes me happy.
Yes, it does.
Or better yet, invite us to LA to do a performance.
Okay, that sounds good too.
I'm going to go find a bank to rob because I would love to have you do that. That would be amazing.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And good luck this summer. All right, bye-bye.
Oh, that excites me.
I know your theater is your thing.
I get all itchy and go, I want to do theater with our kids on our spectrum, and I'm trying to work that out so that I can. But time has to permit.
Time.
Yes, but that's how much fun and how much all of those kids will learn.
Exactly.
That's really incredible. All right, we've got to take a break.
Fullerton Cares.
Because we have to get a bunch of people into the studio. We've got Fullerton Cares in the house. Larry Hauser, Boyd, and Madelynn. Dabs is going to be with us as well. They're going to be amazing. You're going to love it. Don't go anywhere. Stick with us. A question that came in on Facebook that I wanted to make sure that we addressed from a young adult. He wants to know what resources would be available for someone who is an adult, not diagnosed as being on the spectrum, but has a lot of the same mannerisms and traits as someone on the spectrum. For instance, how would one be diagnosed as an adult, and what places would be able to do that? It sucks seeing videos of people who are diagnosed talking in a way similar to the way that I talk, giving gestures with their hands that I give, but knowing that I was possibly not diagnosed because my mother didn't care and didn't give me any support, or because I was such a high-functioning individual that testing for my form of it wasn't as up-to-date as it is now.
Very smart. You're a very, very smart person, you are. Not too many people would actually realize that, you know, this is an adult. So when you were a child, I guess it was sort of this huge ocean of individuals coming into, it's like a massive flood of people coming in, and I assume you're a young adult because there are not that many older adults, you know. So when we're looking at let's say 20 years ago, diagnostic issues were very different. It wasn't so much about diagnosing the higher functioning folks as it was there were just so many kids coming in with severe forms of autism that all the attention on diagnostics was on them. It was a flood, you know, of young people coming in. So I would say now with the new diagnostic criteria that allows us to kind of diagnose based on severity, you know, in the old days, like before 2003, you may have possibly been classified as either Asperger's or pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. Now, the criteria are pretty much the same. There is no other sort of milder form. It's the same, but you can have a severity of 1, 2, or 3, 3 being the most severe and 1 being the least severe. So where would you go? You would go to a diagnostic center. You're in the US, I assume, and if you're in the US, any psychologist would be able to do this for you. A psychiatrist would probably be able to do this for you. So you're really looking for a psychologist or psychiatrist. Preferably, I think you're in better shape if you go to a center where it specializes in autism, like where we are, or many universities have this as well, simply because generally speaking, people are more dismissive when it's an older individual who's high functioning. And so I don't know that it has really anything to do with your parents. I think it has your mom, for instance. I think more than not, it's likely that people were very dismissive because you're very high functioning. So, and what you're looking for, you know, the way the diagnosis works, there has to be a set number and very specific criteria that are met. So the first domain of the diagnosis is what's called social communication, and there are a specific number of symptoms, and every single one of those boxes has to be checked. Now, you can't not check one of them in that segment. In the second section, there's several symptoms. This has now to do with the second kind of domain that we look at, which is called stereotypic or repetitive sensory-based types behaviors, and you have to have like one at least in that area. So you kind of, it's a little bit different, but it's based on a series of symptoms. Look it up. Look up DSM-5, autism spectrum disorder, and it'll come up. You can find it. It's online. Autism Speaks has it on their website. You can just look it up online. It'll come up. The symptom criteria for autism or ASD, it'll just pop up. But you want to look at the DSM-5 version, and you'll see. And if you really feel that you fit the required criteria, then go see a psychologist or go to a center, and they will give you a diagnosis. Now, what will the diagnosis do for you? It will get you access to ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, through your health insurance, through your medical insurance, and you will then be able to access people like us. And what we do, of course, I would love to work with you. I don't know where you are, but we do have a whole program for very, very advanced, high-functioning adults. My supervisors who deal with the adults at CARD are fantastic. So I don't know where you are, but those are the steps I would take. And if you do actually get a diagnosis, and you're always welcome to come to us for diagnosis as well. So just get in touch.
And he has written in while you were talking and said that he has tried living by himself, but yesterday at the doctor, they said that they want to put him in assisted living. And he says, I failed at living by myself.
Yeah, so and those are things that we can definitely help you with. And I just don't want you to think about it as a failure. You know, we go through a lot of things in life, and if we didn't try them and didn't fail at them, we wouldn't learn. So please don't look at it as I failed at something. You need some additional tools, and I'm pretty sure we can give you those tools. And the way to go about it is just to go through the path, get your diagnosis, and as I said, if you're anywhere near LA, come and I'll diagnose you. I'll look at you. I'll talk to you myself. And if you're not, just get in touch with us.
Dr. Grandin, what is it like for you personally to have become the most celebrated person in the field of autism?
Well, I feel it's a responsibility. I get a lot of emails and letters from young kids. In fact, at the last conference I was at, I got a whole envelope of letters from kids in an English class. What makes me pleased is I think I'm inspiring a lot of kids to succeed, because I want to see kids succeed. Now, one problem I'm seeing with some of the fully verbal kids is they're not getting stretched enough. I see kids coming up to me at conferences where nobody's taught them how to shake hands. See, when I was a young child, I had to be party host at my mother's parties, had to shake hands, say please and thank you, have table manners, learn how to shop. And I'm seeing too many situations where they aren't learning those basic skills.
Yeah, so you really think they need the basic skills that every child should learn?
Yes. Now, in the 50s, every child was taught social skills in a much more structured way. And today, that's not the case. Now, the so-called normal kids, they pick it up, but the autistic kids have got to be taught. Okay. And that's not being done enough.
What kind of preconceptions, though, do you think most people have about relating to those with ASD?
Autism is a really big spectrum. You're going all the way from Silicon Valley down to somebody with a lot of intellectual challenges. Now, the kinds of services and things a person needs is very different, those two ends of the spectrum. And I go to different places. I go to Silicon Valley, and I see a lot of people that I know are on the spectrum. And then I go see another kid that's smart at math, but nothing's being done to develop his skills, and he's getting addicted to video games. And they are the same kind of kid. The thing that I'm seeing, especially on the mild end of the spectrum, is too many kids sort of becoming the label. I'm very concerned about them getting a handicap mentality. Then I go over to the meatpacking plant, and there's a whole maintenance shop of old hippies that I know are on the spectrum, and they run that maintenance shop. And they've been there for years and years and years.
Why do you think the numbers, 1 in 68 now, have risen so dramatically?
I think on the mild end of the spectrum, it's increased detection. Because I can think of kids I went to elementary school with, kids I went to college with, that today would be diagnosed on the spectrum. I think that's a big part of it on the mild end of the spectrum. Now, I think there also is some severe autism that may have actually increased because there's more environmental contaminants, and there's more medications being given during early pregnancy.
Dr. Grandin, you beg parents not to let their children with autism be defined by the DSM or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Why?
Well, I think the DSM made a big mistake removing Asperger's syndrome, because under the DMS-4, autism you had to have speech delay, Asperger was no speech delay. Now, you could argue scientific reasons for taking out the speech delay stuff, but from a service provider standpoint, you know, the kind of services that somebody's nonverbal has is different than a mild kid with Asperger's. And I'm seeing too many fully verbal kids, less severe than me, getting put into a class with nonverbal kids. I'm seeing too many smart kids not learning job skills. That's another thing that I really push. Because when I was 13, my mother had got me in a sewing job. When I was 15, I was cleaning horse stalls. It's really important that students intern in a job before they graduate from high school. They got to learn that discipline of getting to work.
If you could speak to every business owner in America, what would you say to convince them to hire somebody on the autism spectrum?
Well, there's certain things they can do extremely well. In fact, the SAP Corporation is hiring people with autism. There's another Project Search, where there's work being done with collaborating with hospitals to train them to set up surgical instruments for different types of surgery. And they take longer to train, but once they're trained, they're super, super good and meticulous about making sure the instruments are set up right. And that's got about a 78% employment rate.
So you think the skills that those with ASD have to offer are often overlooked by people that employ?
As I said before, I can think of kids that I went to college with that definitely were on the autism spectrum. Those individuals are all employed in good jobs. And I think a lot of this gets back pounding those manners in the 50s and the 60s, and kids being on things like paper routes, where they learned work skills.
Why do you think the experts in the field of ASD focus so intensely on the deficits and not on the strengths of autism?
Well, we need to be building up strengths. My ability in art was always encouraged. And I was encouraged to do lots of different kinds of art. If you got a third grader that's good at math, and he can do a high school math book, let him do the high school math book. Don't hold them back.
I want to know why you think that so little attention has been paid to the sensory processing issues. What can we learn from those?
Well, I just heard about a brand new study that's been done up at the in California, Dr. Wu, and they took children aged 4 through 12 that had speech delay, and they stayed in their regular programs, ABA or whatever the speech therapy the school was doing, and then they got an hour a day of sensory therapy where they did a lot of variety of stimulation, like walk on different kinds of flooring, smell different smells, do different activities in a mirror, big variety, always doing more than one sensory thing at a time. And it was done as a controlled experiment, where half the kids just got the regular treatment and the other half got this added sensory treatment. And they got some really big, significant improvements. And they made the point of using all very inexpensive things that would be in any house.
There's so much division in the autism community. How do you think we can all come together and find a common ground?
I think that merging Asperger's together with autism has made all of this worse, because you have a segment of very, very severely handicapped kids where they're never going to be able to live independently. That's a very different kind of situation than a mild Asperger's type of kid. You see, you're putting too many apples and oranges together. Every other diagnosis, like dyslexia, learning problems, ADHD, you've got a fully verbal kid. Only an
Yes.
We have a house full right now.
We do a full studio.
With a bunch of housers that are here. If you watch the show, you know that there's a yearly event that I absolutely love. It's the Fullerton Cares Mardi Gras for Autism. And joining us right now, we have Larry Hauser, who is the mastermind behind Fullerton Cares and this wonderful event. And we have Madelynn who's here with it. And we have, for the first time in the studio, well, it's Madelynn's first time too, but this is Boyd Hauser, and we're so excited to have all of you here with us.
Boyd is Larry's son.
Yep.
Yes.
So, and Madelynn, you're a volunteer for Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
And are very involved in it, right?
Yeah, I'm his stepdaughter too.
Oh, okay.
So it's one big happy family.
Yeah, it's one big happy
family. Well, Larry, tell us a little bit more about Pillars of Fullerton Cares and how it was started and all about it.
It was started shortly after Boyd. We found out that Boyd had autism, and we were. I was I signed up for one of the Autism Speaks walk, and was really kind of just unsure of really what to do, and just in the beginning where you're all confused and stuff like that. And so I put it out there on Facebook, and I own a restaurant, two.
An amazing restaurant.
What's the name of your restaurant?
Yeah.
It's Bourbon Street Bar and Grill, and also the Bowery, got craft beer and pizza.
Okay.
But he saw my Facebook post, and he invited me over to his place to throw a comedy show to raise money. So from that point, I realized that, and a ton of people showed up to support the cause, and from that point, I realized that we had something in our area, and that's how Fullerton Cares started. But we do a ton of stuff. I mean, it ranges from building sensory gardens, building sensory rooms, giving the teachers inside the Fullerton School District money before they start the year. We have work programs that we partner with the Fullerton School District at our restaurants 5 days a week for 2 hours every week. We've hired 3 kids from that program, so they're getting real paychecks, wow, just we also hold an amazing event every year, which is what we're mainly known for, and that's the Mardi Gras for Autism.
And when you said we knew that we had something special, I think you hit the nail on the head, because there is something very special about Fullerton. This group of people, parents and entrepreneurs, come together, business people. And I always say, I come to Mardi Gras for Autism every year because there is no event that's like it. It is an event that benefits autism and raises awareness, but it is the only event that you go to that the entire community comes and is there and is supporting. And I feel that that's a lot because of you. You make me want to weep. You are such an awesome
Thank you.
autism dad and community member. But we have these 2 guests that we also have to talk to.
Right.
So Boyd, we're excited that you're here. Can you tell us first of all how old you are?
First, I'm 11 years old.
Didn't you just have a birthday?
Yep, I had a birthday. Yep.
And I know that you had, because I saw on Facebook, you had an amazing party. What was the theme of that party?
The theme of that was the Super Mario.
Oh,
Super
cool.
Mario. And did you even have face painting?
Face painting, yes I did. Actually.
What did you get put on your face?
Donkey Kong.
Donkey Kong.
And there was the Mario.
Yeah.
Like the Mario was there. And we played
your cake was amazing.
Yep, it was good. We had there was mushroom cupcakes.
Mushroom cupcakes?
Yep.
I've never heard of that.
A lot of cupcakes you need to do.
That's amazing.
There's 3 games we played.
Yeah.
The shell game, like if it makes a coin sound, you're out.
So you're a little into the Mario Brothers is what you're telling us.
Pretty much a lot.
You're also into, you do martial arts, don't you?
Yeah. Teeny Titans, Angry Birds, like sports, and lots of things.
Well,
that's cool.
You are amazing. And are you excited about the Mardi Gras for Autism?
Pretty much I am.
What do you like to do at the Mardi Gras for Autism?
I would like to do play games, watch like something pretty cool, like when you eat at Bowery. And let me think about some questions.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I got some.
Yeah.
The dance studio. There's a dance studio I like to watch.
Oh, neat.
Absolutely, I like to watch the dance studio too.
And I was part of the dance group, but then I quitted.
Okay. Well, you have a pretty full plate with all the other things that
You
you're
do.
doing.
You have so many extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
But do you have any idea how proud everybody is of you? We see you all the time. Like I saw you at the comedy show and you came out. You did such a good job.
Yeah, and I got the award for Child of the Year, 2018.
You're amazing.
That's great.
You're an amazing.
I'm so proud to be like this.
And
I bet you are.
And here is Madelynn, who's sitting next to you, and we're proud of Madelynn too. So Madelynn, tell us a little bit about what you really like about Fullerton Cares and about the Mardi Gras for Autism.
Well, every Mardi Gras for Autism, I get up at like 5 a.m. with my mom, and we go and we help set up, and we're there till the end of the event. And I just really love to see all the kids that have disabilities and all the kids that don't interact, and kind of this event really brings the whole community together.
Yeah.
And I really like to see that, especially when him and his friends come. I like to see them having fun and just everyone coming together. I think it's really cool.
So tell us a little bit about you and where you go to school, because you go to school someplace pretty amazing.
Yeah, I go to OSHA, Orange County School of the Arts in Santa Ana.
And are you, that's your thing, the arts? Are you, what's your focus?
I'm in a conservatory called Integrated Arts, so I do a little bit of everything. So singing, acting, dancing, writing, drawing.
Triple threat.
And you've written 2 monologues?
Yes.
Tell us about those.
Yeah, this past weekend I got to perform and have one of my monologues performed at a fundraiser for a theater in where I live. And one of my monologues was about a boy with autism, and the character was a girl who was his neighbor, who was kind of intrigued by him, and it was supposed to be in the later times where people with autism weren't really understood, and it was just about how she was very kind of envious of how peaceful and calm because he would swing on a swing, and that's how she would kind of see him every day, and she was kind of envious, and she talked about how he was bullied and stuff, and it was really awesome to be able to do that.
That's quite an accomplishment. You're a very accomplished young lady. You're also into photography, huh?
Yeah. I like to go on nature walks with him and our family and just take photos. I like to take pictures of his eyes, especially because they're gorgeous. I was talking about that earlier.
Yeah. You do have beautiful eyes, Boyd. It's true.
So back to Mardi Gras. When is it?
It's a couple weeks here. It's April 6th.
April 6th.
And it is, you've been there quite a number of times. It's just an amazing event.
It's the best. And for anybody who's in the area, Fullerton is Disneyland adjacent. Let's say that. I mean, it really is. That's what it is. It's right near Disneyland in California. How long? Like an 8-minute drive from Fullerton.
If that, we're right on the same street as Disneyland.
It's crazy how close that it is. So if you're going to Disneyland, definitely you want to come by and make sure you come to the Bourbon Street Bar and Grill and the newer place that I haven't been to yet.
Oh, the Bowery.
The Bowery with the pizza, which Boyd says is super fun, and I believe Boyd. I'm with Boyd.
He loves pizza.
Make sure that and the food is amazing because we've been to Bourbon Street before, and the food is to die for. It's so good. But if you are going to be in the area on April 6th, it is the event to go to. If you want to be lifted up and feel the hope of what a community can look like when everybody gets on the same page, we all talk about how we want to get to autism awareness. And I don't think anybody really knows what that looks like and what it would be like. But I think Fullerton has tipped the scale, and you guys are at awareness, and now you're just about supporting.
Right. It's the event is just it's exceeded everything that we even could imagine. You know, in the beginning, we just wanted to help with the stigma of autism and get more people aware. But you know, we have so many colleges in the city. We have so many clubs and organizations and fellow entrepreneurs that want to help and be a part of it. I remember when we took just a little part of the parking lot. Now we take the whole train station parking lot. And as soon as I put out the call for vendors, I'm like literally sold out right away. It's just and they're vendors that I actually I look at, and I make sure that we're not getting any imposters who just want to see if there's a market for autism inside their business. That's not what I do. Or those aren't the vendors that you're going to find there. You're going to find people who actually put a big effort into autism into their practice. So our families are going to get there, and they're going to find the best, most directed resources that they possibly can find.
And if you've been looking for something to take, like, you know, maybe you have a neighbor, and we had a question earlier about what do I do for my in-laws that don't, you know, participate and don't get autism. This is the event to take them to. Take your neighbor and all their kids and say, hey, we're going to this event. It's the Mardi Gras for autism. Let's all go. Everyone will have a good time. There's something for everyone, for adults and for kids, for teenagers. There's something for everyone. There's amazing food. You have the biggest group of volunteers, and maybe this is a question for Madelynn, because I see you with your friends always working that. You know, everybody gets beads that's there. It is Mardi Gras, but in the nicest, most PG-rated, G-rated way, Mardi Gras, right? But it's a big group of people, right? What are some of the things that the volunteers do, Madelynn?
Well, like I said before, a big group wakes up really early, and we set up all the booths and the stage and hang up all the banners and decorations. There's a whole group of performers that come. There's people, my Girl Scout troop volunteers sometimes to help in the sensory garden, and we help play with the kids and hand out beads like you were saying. There's a whole cleanup crew. There's people managing all the bounce houses and all the rides. There's we usually get like football teams or high school teams that help and set up because they can lift stuff, and we got Disney volunteers. The whole community helps out.
It really is something for everybody, whether they're on the spectrum or not.
Absolutely, right? And the sensory garden is super fun for all kids.
The not part is really the main focus of that event. The people who are not on the spectrum. Yeah. Because it is an event that attracts those families that aren't affected by autism, and that's really what we want, because we want to show them what these other families, or what autism looks like, and that really is the special part of the event.
So tell us again, when is it? How can people find out about it? Because we're almost out of time here. I'm losing my voice.
Yes, you are. So what date again?
It's Saturday, April 6th, and you can find more about it on our website, www.fullertoncares.com. It's right there front and center. There's tons of videos. You can even Google the event. You can Google Fullerton Cares, and you'll see videos and pictures all over the internet about the event.
And there are so many things to do, getting face paint, and there are rides even, and all kinds of people to meet. Autism Live will be there. I will be there. Wouldn't miss it because it's, honestly, it's one of the events that really recharges my battery for everything for the year, because I go, look, we can do anything after I go to the Mardi Gras for autism. So there are people that are in costume and in stilts and people wearing crowns. It's the Mardi Gras, folks. It's truly amazing. Boyd, are you excited about it?
Yep, pretty excited. Pretty excited.
I love it.
Good for you, sweetie.
And I know that we're all super excited. So I want to thank you guys for being
Thank you for
first-timers
coming
on
out.
Autism Live. You guys did a great job. Super proud of you. And we didn't get to mention that your mom is the fabulous Summer Dabs.
Yeah.
And everybody who watches Autism Live knows who Summer is, because you know the video that we show. We showed a lot, what is autism, and we have, Summer is the one with the beautiful red hair. Your mother has the most beautiful hair, but you're catching up to her. You've got gorgeous hair too. But in any case, she will be there. You're going to be there, of course. Are you going to wear a king crown?
I got a new one that I ordered, so
Good
for
you.
There's a new one coming out.
All right, we'll have to see that. What about you, Boyd? Do you wear a king crown?
Well, I don't really have a crown, but maybe good. Maybe buy one if I want to.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
It could be. It could be.
Buy one.
Yeah.
Maybe a Mario crown.
Yeah.
Ooh.
After
That
Teeny Titans and Mario.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So in any case, we will look forward, and we'll be talking about this more next week because we love you. We love your family, and we love this event. We love your community. I keep talking to my kid about he should go to college in Fullerton because Mama wants to retire to Fullerton. In any case, so we thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for coming today.
I guess we're out of time.
We're out of time.
But thank you for being here. We are back next week, but next week starts the new we're
hour
here,
a day.
Tomorrow
You're,
anyway.
yeah,
I'll
you're
talk
here
about it
tomorrow. Talk about
but
it
next
tomorrow.
week we start the new Monday through Friday that Autism Live will be here Monday through Friday.
Right.
So stay tuned tomorrow. Big show tomorrow, and we'll do the big reveal about that schedule. Until then, give your kiddos a hug for me.
And give yourselves a hug from me.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.